brass face plug versus wooden face plug. Let's first understand what a face plug actually does. Despite its name, it doesn't correct the phase in the electrical sense, and it certainly isn't just a decorative element. Its job is to control how high-frequency sound waves propagate around the center of the cone. Why mainly high frequencies? Because the higher the frequency, the shorter the wavelength becomes. At 100 Hz, the wavelength is about 3.4 meters. At 3 kHz, it's already only 11.4 centimeters. At 10 kHz, it drops to 3.4 centimeters. And at 18 kHz, the wavelength is just 19 millimeters. At these wavelengths, the dimensions and shape of the face plug becomes highly significant. Now, the geometry comes first. The shape of the face plug is by far the most important parameter. OGY uses an oggy-shaped face plug, designed by EMS specifically to work with the profile of the LB5 cone. This geometry wasn't created by accident, and I haven't changed it. The only thing I changed is the material. If you've ever looked at compression driver-based so-called bullet tweeters, you'll notice similar profiles. The reason is exactly the same. Once wavelengths become short enough, controlling how the wave propagates becomes critical. Then comes the material. If geometry determines where the wave travels, the material influences how that interaction takes place. Acoustics and material science tells us that wave interaction depends not only on shape, but also on the material's acoustic impedance, stiffness, internal damping, and the microscopic condition of its surface. Wood and brass are fundamentally different in all these respects. Wood has a natural cellular structure and relatively high internal damping. Even when perfectly crafted, it can never be polished to the microscopic smoothness available with metal. Brass behaves differently. It is much denser, significantly stiffer, and can be polished to an almost mirror-like surface. In our case, it is then protected by a thin layer of gold to prevent oxidation. The geometry remains exactly the same, only the material changes, and with it, the way the highest frequency sound waves interact with the surface. So, what does that sound like? This is probably the most interesting question. This is, of course, the subjective part. Everything I've said so far is based on acoustics and engineering. What comes next is simply my own listening experience. The interesting thing is that the difference isn't limited to the highest frequencies. It subtly affects the overall presentation. OGY doesn't become brighter. It doesn't become more analytical. Its character remains exactly the same. It simply sounds a little more refined. The easiest place to hear it is on instruments that naturally produce a lot of high-frequency energy and complex harmonics. A triangle, small bells, and above all, cymbals. If I had to describe the difference with a single analogy, this would be it. Imagine replacing the stock cymbals supplied with the entry-level drum kit with a set of professional hand-hammered bronze cymbals from Zildjian, Paiste or Sabian. The music doesn't change. The drummer doesn't change. The rhythm doesn't change. But the quality of the instrument does. The shimmer becomes more natural. The decay becomes more convincing. the harmonic complexity becomes easier to follow. That's the closest comparison I can make. And once you hear that refinement on cymbals, you also begin to notice it elsewhere, in vocal sibilance, in the sense of air around instruments, in the overall effortlessness of the presentation. The effect isn't dramatic. It's not supposed to be. After 5 years with OGY, I wasn't looking for a different loudspeaker. I was simply looking for another small step towards a greater refinement.